up guys? Today I will break down this sample that I have made from scratch a few weeks ago. So the first sound is this Analog Lab 5 multi-keys made by Mac Shooter, and it's the Analog Tools 2 and it's the Trigon multi-key. I can't let y'all hear the pattern in the piano roll because it makes my PC lag so much and I'm scared that my CPU will catch on fire. So right now I'm in the scale of D sharp minor and then I'm going down 5 steps. So I'm playing the first note and the fifth of the D sharp minor scale. To keep my CPU safe, I've just exported the audio and this is how the unprocessed version sounds. By the way, I'm just pitching it up a whole octave. For the processing, I have this Echo Boy that plays with this automation clip right here. Then I have an effect track on the Liquid Vibe preset, and I think that is like on 22%, yeah. Then I have this EQ to cut some of the low end and a bit of the high end, because I wanted to give that vintage feeling to the sample. Then I have this other EQ to cut some of the low end and some of the mids. And here I'm just boosting some of the presence. Then I have this reverb that also plays with an automation clip. And in the end I have this tube deck, which is just a basic compressor. So as you can hear, I have a lot of space like in reverb and delay going on. Then for the second sound I have this Beat Sinner key, and it's from the Beat Sinner Sync 1 Shot kit. This is how it sounds. And here I'm basically following the chords with these triads. Then after I've exported the audio, that's the processing, an Echo Boy with this preset right here, an off time. Then I have this reverb, pancake, to pan the audio left and right, and I have the mix on 36, and that's the processed version. Sounds like spaced out with these delayed effects and the reverb. Then I have this analog bass from the Beat Sinner Sync 1 Shot kit, and this is basically the entire pattern for the bass. I'm just playing the root notes of the chords, so D sharp and A sharp. Then I'm cutting it at the end. Right there, just to give it some rest. That's the processing, a basic EQ, just to cut some of the high end, because it was too present in the bass and I didn't like it too much. Then I'm using this Labs piano just to complement the main melody of the sample, and I'm adding these passing notes here and here. I like the piano because it gives some depth to the sample, and I wanted to achieve that vintage sound. So what I did with the piano was using this sketch cassette that is basically doing all the work to make the piano sound like vintage and old. Then I have this EQ to cut some of the low end, this other EQ to cut some of the low end again. Then I have this reverb on the room preset. Then I have this texture. I don't know if y'all notice it, but this sounds so similar to the first melody of the sample, and that's because I'm recycling it and I'm adding a Semantic Lotus, which if you don't know is this plugin right here, and I'm using it to add that like texturized feel to the sample. Then for the effects, I have this effect track on the Analog Chorus preset to make the sound wider in the mix. Then I have this Echo Boy with these settings. Then I have these 3D flanges on the default preset, and I'm turning down the mix to 25. Then I have this EQ to cut some of the low end and high end, this other EQ to cut some of the unwanted frequencies, And this is how the processed version sounds. So the last sounds that I have added to the sample are these textures. I have this perk loop made by Lewis, and this is from the Nemo kit. This is the Agua perk loop. As you can hear, there's like a delay going on, and that's because I have this effect track with this delay right here that boosts the presence of the perk loop in the sample. Then I also have this other perk loop that acts as a complement to the other perk loop, to the first perk loop, sorry. And this is the Bali perk loop, and I'm using it as like a kick. For the processing of this second perk loop, I'm always using this preset. Then I have this EQ, then I have this other EQ to boost some of the bass so that I can hear the kick, and then I'm just cutting some of the frequencies that I didn't want to hear. So this is the final version of the perk loop. Then I have this simple noise to help the rhythm and the bounce of the sample, and for the effects of the noise I have this EQ and this other EQ to cut some of the low, and this is basically the noise. Literally as simple as that, and this is the first section of the sample. To change some things up in the second section of the sample, I have this saturated synth that sounds really weird, but I think that it's working quite nicely in the sample. I know that sounds weird right now, but when I was making the sample, I feel that it was adding something unique to make it stand out from the other section. For the processing of this synth, I have this really fast distortion with these settings. Then I have this echo boy. Then I have an EQ to cut some of the low end because it was way too powerful in the low end. Then I have this other EQ to cut some of the unwanted frequencies. Then I have a reverb and a pancake to pan the sound left and right. And what's changing is also this piano. That is the same piano from the first section of the sample, but I'm just chopping it up to make it sound a little bit different, and I'm just doing this to recycle the sounds, because for me recycling is the key when talking about sample making, because you can use the same sound but make some small changes that can lead to some uniqueness inside your sample. So that's the second section version of the piano. As you can hear, I'm not making big changes with this piano. I'm just repeating some parts and adding something that I think that can complement the sample. The last sound that is barely present is this perk. Just a light perk to complement the rhythm of the sample. And for the processing, I only using this reverb, and I'm just cutting some of the low end. And to go into the third section of the sample, I have this bass that basically follows the root notes of the sample. And this is the beat sinner bass, and it's the saturated 9 bass, and as you can hear this bass sounds different from the first one because I wanted to switch something up to add some energy at the end of the sample. And to introduce this bass, I'm adding this simple reverse bass that sounds like this. for the master, I have this really limiter just to add some gain to the sample. Then I have this EQ to cut some of the low and boost some of the highest frequencies. Then I have this suit with this preset that you can find in the master section, and it's the low mid rescue preset just to resolve that mudiness that I heard in the sample. Then I have this soft clipper. This is basically how the entire sample sounds.